Hey y'all, welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. My name is Corbin Wildcat, and I'm here to talk about some of my favorite kind of trees, bonsai trees. Now, a lot of you guys know I kind of just got into this hobby. What I've noticed is this is a hobby that takes a lot of time and a lot of patience to kind of slowly dip your toe in at first, but then you kind of start to understand the inner workings of it. And today I wanted to show you guys kind of a little crash course of, we're going to talk about some styles of bonsai, and we're also going to be talking about some of my favorite species that I've seen done as bonsais. And as always, check out MrMaple.com. You'll find some awesome trees to turn into some bonsais on there. Alright guys, one of the first things we're going to get talking about is some of the coolest trees that I've seen turned into bonsai. Now, a lot of things can be turned into quote-unquote bonsai, as it does mean putting a tree inside of a pot. Now, there's a lot of many forms of this. You know, sometimes people put a sprout of a seedling in a pot. Sometimes people put 1 gallons in a pot. Sometimes they'll go out and find a pretty nice specimen to bring back home and put it in a pot, or air layering. There's so many types of bonsai, but we're going to talk about some of my favorite species inside of the bonsai pots. And you guys will notice a couple of these are ones that we talk about a lot here on the Mr. Maple channel. Some of them aren't, but first we're going to start off. I love pine trees. Pine trees are one of my favorite things to make into bonsai. One of my first trees that I got was actually a white pine, Pinus paviflora, and it's a tree, a cultivar called Fukai. Now, in bonsai, a lot of the actual trees themselves are actually seedlings or root cuttings from a seedling. But here at Mr. Maple, we like to spice it up. We like to throw some cool cultivars into pots and see what happens. So, in the subspecies of pines, I've seen so many different kinds of trees. I've seen red pines, black pines, white pines. I've seen Pinus strobus. I mean, you can turn any kind of pine into a bonsai, and I mean, they're going to look beautiful. And the bark on there is just going to slowly develop and turn into an amazing tree as, you know, you start getting some years on these things. Another tree that I love is the Goko Baloba. I mean, this tree has such an interesting shape. Sometimes it gets a little funky on the growth habit. And I mean, the fall color. I mean, we talk about ginkgo fall color all the time. Now just imagine that all shrunk down into a tiny pot that you can slowly watch develop and enjoy as it continues. And I mean, who doesn't love a tiny little ginkgo leaf too? So, onto some new ones, like what I've been exploring, and some of the stuff that I've been seeing a little bit more is some azalea bonsais. And I mean, holy cow, those are going to be an amazing spring interest bonsai. They're going to have some great floral wonder in there. You know, you're going to see some awesome flowers. And something I've noticed in bonsai is sometimes everything gets smaller. You know, sometimes people use fruiting plants and they'll have tiny little apples, tiny little pomegranates on them, and it's really cool. Now imagine tiny little flowers on top of your little bonsai tree. And that's what the azaleas and those rhododendrons bring whenever you throw them in a pot. And some of the most beautiful bonsai I've seen have been these azaleas. And I can't wait till springtime to see some more. So, alright, what do we got next? I mean, Chinese elms and elm trees in general, and another amazing tree to turn into a bonsai. These trees have an amazing foliage. They have a nice structure. I feel like they really start to bulk up at the bottom of that trunk and give you some nice nabari as well. So these ones, I've seen a lot more traditional kind of bonsai done with these. But one that I definitely haven't dipped my toe in, but I've seen a lot of people working with them. Now we're getting into some of the top ones, I think. I mean, I see these around everywhere and they're amazing. But the junipers, guys, those junipers are amazing. It's going to be some of those crazy trees that you see. You're going to get a lot of nice green color. I mean, it's an evergreen tree. But something I see done with junipers all the time is dead wood. Now, the process of that is called gin, and that means you're removing the bark slowly from the tree and exposing the underneath wood. You run over top of it with a sealer so that the wood doesn't rot. What happens as the tree slowly dries this part out and it continues to grow around it, you get this beautiful white tree bark that is almost like a skeleton on this tree. I mean, it's like an exposed skeletal area of the bonsai tree. You can see into it, and I mean, a lot of carving is done on these things to kind of shape them into a more natural form. And an awesome thing that I've seen on YouTube is Bonsai Mirai. He goes off and looks for bonsais in the wild, and I know this isn't a juniper that he was looking at, but there's some awesome windswept pines that he goes and checks out, and you can see the actual dead wood on some of these trees from where they've just been blasted by sand, and it has slowly peeled off that bark and the cambium layer to expose the skeleton of the tree, and that's what you kind of recreate, and junipers are a great tree to do that with. Now guys, we wouldn't be the Mr. Maple channel unless we talk about some maple bonsai. All the subspecies, guys. I mean, I've seen people do dissectum bonsais. I've seen them trident maple bonsai. I've seen regular palmatum bonsai. And I mean, all different types of colors. You got Shinda Sojo, which is going to be a pink and white in the springtime. Those look electric. I've seen some Akawa bonsai done. And also, you know, back to the lace leaves, I've seen some Atro purpureum. And one of my favorite things that people do with the maple bonsai is forests. Now, it looks beautiful. Sometimes, you know, as the seasons change, different trees inside the same bonsai pot will have different reactions to the fall. So you'll have sometimes a slow gradient from the back to the front of this tree, slowly turning into fall color. And yeah, maples are one of the coolest trees to do bonsai with. And I might be talking out of a little bit of bias, but I think they look amazing. And that kind of leads us into another talking point that I want to talk about is some of the different styles of bonsai that we see around. And these are some of my favorites. Obviously, there's a bunch of different ones, but we have informal upright bonsai, which is in Japanese moyogi. And that kind of is the straight up regular bonsai. You're kind of mimicking a regular tree in nature, and you're kind of adding those layers of the tree. That's kind of the ones that you see. You saw that awesome Acer Bajerianum that was like 200 years old or whatever that we saw at the Pacific Bonsai Museum. That one I would describe as that a formal upright. Now, the informal, it kind of lean a little bit to the right, lean a little bit to the left, and have those amazing layers going up it. And, I mean, you'll see some of those bonsais popping up right now of some informal bonsai styles going on. Then next, we have cascading. And there's two styles of cascading. There's a semi-cascading and a regular cascading. And the cascading is called Kingai, and the semi-cascade is called Han Kingai. And those ones are going to be those amazing bonsais that slowly weep over the pots. I mean, I don't know how they do this. I think that it's sometimes a slow turning method. They'll slowly turn a bonsai from upright position further and further, or possibly they'll use a weeping variety of tree and slowly train it over the edge. This one is, I think, more mimicked to a tree that you would see hanging over a cliff or a ledge or a waterfall. And that's kind of the essence that these trees have, is they're very fluid. They hang over the pot. That it's almost, yeah, like a fluid motion. And they're some of my favorite ones. Sometimes the pot will be a foot above the actual end of the tree itself, and get some amazing layering and almost like a clouding. And I love those trees. And now we're kind of getting into some of my favorite styles, like the cooler ones. We have a wind swept style. These are some of the coolest ones, I believe. It's meant to mimic a tree that's spent its whole entire life on the side of a mountain that has a constant draft going above it. And I mean, if you've ever been hiking out in the woods, sometimes you just see those funky trees that have been manipulated by the wind. They'll be in this style of bonsai, it'll go one way up to the right or left, and all of the leaves and limbs will be pointed on one side of the tree, mimicking how that wind blows and pushes the tree across. Sometimes the style is accompanied by, like I was saying earlier, that dead wood, and kind of exposing that skeletal structure from wind abrasion. And I mean, these are some of my favorite trees. And bonsai, it's obviously, you're supposed to be mimicking nature. And sometimes you see a tree that's kind of set up in a scene. Alright guys, now we're going to get into, I think, this might be my favorite kind of style of bonsai. And instead of using one tree, you're going to use multiple. And this one is called the forest bonsai style, where you're picking, I think, 7 trees, and you're kind of organizing them into a composition that mimics a forest. Throw some rocks in there, throw some moss. You're building a landscape, and I think that this one is said to be one of the easier styles of bonsai to do, but I think it is one of the most beautiful. You get so many trees packed into one little pot, and sometimes they don't even use a pot. They'll use a flat rock slab, and it's going to be amazing. What you do is slowly build. You put the smaller trees in the back and have the larger trees in the front, kind of framing the rest of the pot. And like I was saying, one of my favorite ones I've seen is Acer palmatum trees done this way. Usually you pick the same tree. Usually you pick the same species of tree, same cultivar, and you use them all, because that's kind of what's happening in the forest. You'll see a lot of the same trees that are larger. And they all kind of come from that mother tree. I believe this is what it kind of mimics. There's a lot that you could do with this. I mean, like I said, building that composition, having it actually look like a forest, and a lot of creative liberties in this one. And the last one that I want to talk about is root over rock bonsai style. Now this one is pretty nuts. I think that if you enjoy going outside, you live somewhere that's more of a rocky outcropping, you know, you have a lot of large boulders or rocks in your area, you're going to see trees like this, where, you know, a tree started growing, and where it started growing there might have been a good amount of dirt, but as, you know, that dirt washes away off that rock, the tree slowly starts to spread across the rock, shooting roots all over it. And this is what that style mimics. I mean, you're going to have some crazy nabari, and I mean, these trees look amazing. The rock is part of the artwork, so you want to pick a crazy looking rock. What you're going to slowly do is slowly train that bonsai from the top, pull those roots over the rocks, and kind of expose a little bit of dirt at the bottom. And slowly, as those roots grow down, you kind of reveal more and more of the rock, slowly training it down that area. And I mean, these look nuts. I've seen them with an opening at the bottom of the rock. I've seen sharp, jagged rocks, and I think this one really highlights the resilience of trees and kind of shows you like why paper beats rock, honestly. So this one is an awesome style. We'll throw some amazing videos of some of the ones that I've seen. And remember guys, obviously you aren't going to start out with a 50-year-old bonsai. You got to slowly start. You know, for me it was, you know, planting a tree into a pot, realizing that's maybe not how they do it bonsai, but I mean, it's a starting spot. This year I might take that out of the pot, throw it in the ground, let it grow a little bit, do some pruning on it, and maybe it'll be a bonsai here in a couple of years, who knows. But it's all about learning and looking and finding that and trying that and seeing what works for you the best. But yeah guys, that's about all I wanted to talk about. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out the Mr. Maple Show and MrMaple.com for all your tree needs. Take care, God bless, and have a great day.